As long as Doug can hear me, that's what I'm really concerned about this morning. All right. Good to see everyone this morning. Glad you're here. Got Mitch and Miles with us. Rachel continuing to recuperate in the hospital. Very good. We're glad to see that. Sam Robertson is trickling in here in just a second. I see here he comes, and the door's open. Hey, Sam. Sam, is this your last Sunday? It is. Everybody hug Sam. Sam would really like it if you'd give him a hug and give him a kiss on the cheek and just mourn and weep and lament and all of that. Sam would really. We're going to be praying for Sam. And Sam, does everybody know all about what's going on in Colombia? No? Do I need to share it? Is it okay? Is it okay? All right. Sam is going to Colombia. Yeah, it is going to come out eventually. You know how these women are here. No, I'm just playing. Sam is getting married in Colombia. And I happen to know the lady that he is marrying. She is a sweet, sweet, godly person, and we are excited for them to begin their family. And we're crossing our fingers and hoping that after a couple years they can move back here, and that would be fantastic. But Sam will be going to Colombia. When is your flight, Sam? Tuesday. All right, so let's be prayerful for Sam, not only in that journey, but as he begins this new chapter in his life, and we're certainly excited for him and for Marisol and for that family. So we are on Lesson 12 this morning in your booklet. We're talking about the Old Testament King Saul. So you can be flipping over if you're in your Old Testament. 1 Samuel chapter 8 is where we're going to get started. 1 Samuel chapter 8. And as you're turning over there, let's have a word of prayer, and then we'll get started this morning. Father, we're thankful for this morning that we have to come together to open up your word, to study from it, to get an appreciation of this message you have left for us as we go through the pages of the Old Testament, Father. Open our eyes, please, to the examples that you have, the things that we should learn from these stories. Thank you, Father, for your mercy, for your love, for your grace. Thank you for your word. It's in your Son's name that we pray. Amen. All right, so we were talking about the judges 2 weeks ago. And the judges kind of occupy that period of time from Moses and Joshua up to Saul. And what period of time does Saul begin in the Old Testament? The kings, right? And we're going to have, how can we divide up the kings in the Old Testament? We've got the united kingdom and we've got the divided kingdom. The united kingdom is going to refer to the nation of Israel as a whole. And we're going to have how many kings over the united kingdom? We're going to have 3, and who are they? 2 we're talking about this morning, Saul and then David and then Solomon. After Solomon dies, what's going to happen? The kingdom is going to divide, and this is where we get what we call the divided kingdom. You're going to have 2 separate nations, as it were. You're going to have Israel to the north and Judah to the south, and you're going to have a number of kings in both of those nations. But here Saul begins this period that we would call the United Kingdom, and he is serving as a king, David after him, and then Solomon after that. What was God's will concerning a king for the nation of Israel? God was their king, right? And so when the Israelites come before Samuel, and in 1 Samuel chapter 8 make this demand to give us a king that we might be like the other nations around us, give us a king because your sons don't walk in your ways and you are old. This is chapter 8 and verse 6. Samuel prayed to the Lord, and the Lord said to Samuel, "Listen to the voice of the people in regard to all that they say to you, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me from being king over them." And so here's the real issue here is in their call for a king, what they are doing, whether they realize it or not, is they're turning away from God. God had been the one who was their king. And as we come through 1 Samuel, we learn a little bit more about why they wanted a king and some of the thought process that goes into that. But this is the door opening to the monarchy and to Saul having his position. As you look at verse 10, Samuel spoke all the words of the Lord to the people who had asked of him a king. He said, "This will be the procedure of the king who will reign over you. He will take your sons and place them for himself in his chariots and among his horsemen, and they will run before his chariots. He will appoint for himself commanders of thousands and of fifties, and some to do his plowing and reap his harvest, and to make his weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. He will also take your daughters for perfumers and cooks and bakers. He will take the best of your fields and your vineyards and your olive groves and give them to his servants. He will take 1/10 of your seed and of your vineyards and give to his officers and to his servants. He will also take your male servants, your female servants." So you're reading through this. What are you seeing? What's the king going to do? Yeah, whatever he wants, and really what he wants is what? Your stuff, right? Is this what the Israelites were imagining when they said, "Give us a king"? What does that tell us?
They don't follow God.
Okay, they're struggling to follow God. What lesson can we take from it?
We are following God, not.
Okay, we need to follow God and not civic leaders. Anything else? What do you got, Bill? Be content with what you have. Did I see your hand up? No? No? Aaron? Be careful what you ask for. Things sound good, and we might have in our minds a reason for asking for what we're asking for. But especially when we're dealing with matters for God, there's a reason why he has ordered things and set them up the way that he has. And when we begin to insert ourselves in the place of God or think that we might know a little bit better than God, we need to be reminded of stories like these where people haven't worked out in their mind exactly how they think it's going to go, and then they start to see results and things play out, and it's not ever what they intended, but it's exactly what God warned about. Lynn, yes, sir. Certainly, yeah, as we get into 1 Samuel 13, it's going to say that. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Right. Very good. So,
We got an example in our time. What do we have to vote for? Two criminals in many ways.
we're not going to get into that this morning, but I appreciate where you're coming from on that.
One other thing to say.
Say it real quick, and then we're going to move on.
Our representatives do not represent us.
Okay. Let's look at 1 Samuel chapter 9. Let's get back to our Bibles. 1 Samuel chapter 9. So, you've asked for a king. I'm going to give you a king. And the one that God chooses to be king, the one that he calls out, is going to be a man by the name of Saul. We're going out among the sons of Kish, Saul's father, in chapter 9 and verse 1. He had a son, this is verse 2, Bersados. He had a son whose name was Saul, a choice and handsome man. And there was not a more handsome person than he among the sons of Israel. From his shoulders and up, he was taller than any of the people. And so, from what we know about how political campaigns run today and everything like that, he's the front runner, isn't he? Because he's got what? He's got the look. He's got the look. When people see him, they see him and they think what? Leader, right? Leader. The donkeys of Kish, Saul's father, were lost. Kish said to his son Saul, "Take now with you one of the servants and arise and go search for the donkeys." He's out there searching for the donkeys. And we're going to have this encounter eventually with Samuel. Samuel is going to come, and he is going to be revealed as being, or Saul is going to be revealed as being God's choice to be king. This is verse 15. A day before Saul's coming, the Lord had revealed this to Samuel, saying, "About this time tomorrow I will send you a man from the land of Benjamin, and you shall anoint him to be prince over my people Israel. and he will deliver my people from the hand of the Philistines, for I have regarded my people because their cry has come to me. What does that sound like right there? A judge, right? So what Saul is going to be doing, at least here initially, is going to be very similar to the work of a judge, a deliverer of the people, this time from the hands of the Philistines. So as we move through chapter 9 and chapter 10, in chapter 10 we're going to have Saul publicly displayed as being the new king. In verse 24, Samuel said to all the people, "Do you see him whom the Lord has chosen? Surely there is no one like him among all the people." So all the people shouted and said, "Long live the king." Then Samuel told the people the ordinances of the kingdom and wrote them in the book and placed it before the Lord. And Samuel sent all the people away, each to his own house. Saul also went to his house at Gibeah, and the valiant men whose hearts God had touched went with him. But certain worthless men said, "How can this one deliver us?" And they despised him and did not bring him any present, but he kept silent. And of course, chapter 11, we've got the victory over the Ammonites. But shortly after that is when things are going to start to get bad. In chapter 12, Samuel comes before Israel. He gives his address. Verse 2, this is capítulo 12, verso 2. "Now here is the king walking before you, but I am old and gray, and behold, my sons are with you. And I have walked before you from my youth even to this day. Here I am, bear witness against me before the Lord and his anointed. Whose ox have I taken? Whose donkey have I taken? Or whom have I defrauded? Whom have I oppressed? Or from whose hand have I taken a bribe to blind my eyes with it? I will restore it to you." They said, "You have not done any of this to us." He said to them, "The Lord is witness against you, and his anointed is witness this day, and you have found nothing in my hand." And they said, "He is witness." Then Samuel said to the people, "It is the Lord who appointed Moses and Aaron, who brought your fathers up from the land of Egypt. So now take your stand, that I may plead with you before the Lord concerning all the righteousness or the righteous acts of the Lord, which he did for your fathers." And he begins to recount some of the history of Israel. But to what Lynn brought out earlier, come down here to chapter 12 and verse 12. Capítulo 12, verso 12. "When you saw that Nahash, the king of the sons of Ammon, came against you, you said to me, 'No, a king shall reign over us.'" So what was at least one of the driving reasons that Israel asked for a king? They have a nation coming in to attack them. They're worried, and they want a king so they can be like what? They can be like the other nations, and so this king can do what? Lead them into battle, be their warrior king.
Now, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Why is Israel having all these problems?
Because they're turning away from God and not listening to what he said all
They
along.
did not listen to him when they were coming to the promised land, because he told them to wipe out all these races.
That's right.
They took possession.
We covered that about 3 or 4 weeks ago. That's right, Charlie.
They had all these problems with all these other nations.
Yep. So, we're going to keep reading here in verse 13. "Now therefore, here is the king whom you have chosen, whom you have asked for, and behold, the Lord has set a king over you." So, you have rejected the Lord. You've asked for this king. God's going to give you exactly what you ask for, but you can still do what? You can still serve him. Okay, you're still going to have, he's going to be gracious and merciful. You can still serve God. "Now therefore, here is the king whom you have chosen, whom you have asked for, and behold, the Lord has set a king over you." Here's verse 14, verso 14. "If you will fear the Lord and serve him and listen to his voice and not rebel against the command of the Lord, then both you and also the king who reigns over you will follow the Lord your God. If you will not listen to the voice of the Lord, but rebel against the command of the Lord, then the hand of the Lord will be against you as it was against your fathers. You have chosen this for yourselves. I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to be gracious and merciful towards you, though. Still listen to me, still serve me, and I'll take care of you. You serve me, the king serve me, and everything will be well." But what do we know? Doesn't happen, does it? That's not how things are going to happen. The reign of Saul seemingly starts off with a lot of promise. In chapter 13 and verse 1, Saul was 30 years old when he began to reign. He's going to reign in Israel for 42 years. Saul chose for himself 3,000 men of Israel, of which 2,000 were with Saul at Michmash and in the hill country of Bethel, while 1,000 were with Jonathan at Gibeah of Benjamin. But he sent away the rest of the people, each to his tent. Jonathan smote the garrison of the Philistines that was in Geba, and the Philistines heard of it. Then Saul blew the trumpet throughout the land, saying, "Let the Hebrews hear." All Israel heard the news that Saul had smitten the garrison of the Philistines, and also that Israel had become odious to the Philistines. The people were then summoned to Saul at Gilgal. The Philistines assembled to fight with Israel, 30,000 chariots, 6,000 horsemen, and people like the sand which is on the seashore in abundance, and they came up and camped at Michmash east of Beth-aven. When the men of Israel saw that they were in a strait, for the people were hard-pressed, then the people hid themselves in caves and thickets and cliffs and cellars and pits. Some of the Hebrews crossed the Jordan into the land of Gad and Gilead, but as for Saul, he was still in Gilgal, and all the people who were following him were trembling. Now, verse 8. If you're Israel and you want to be victorious in a battle, who do you need on your side? You need God. And so Saul wants to make sure that he has come before God and sought God's blessing and God's approval in his life and in his reign. And so in verse 8, Saul waited 7 days according to the appointed time set by Samuel. But Samuel did not come to Gilgal, and the people were scattering from him. So it's a verse we need to read carefully here because there's not a whole lot of background information given. Saul is wanting sacrifices and offerings to be made on behalf of the Israelites and on his behalf, so that as they go into battle, they can have God with them, God on their side, God fighting for them. And so as you read there in verse 7, there is a time period, verse 8. What's the time period? 7 days. And why 7 days? Okay, so there has been some communication between Saul and Samuel that we don't have a complete record of here, except to say that there was a conversation and that Samuel had specified a period of time in which he was to come and offer these sacrifices, and who was aware of that? Saul was, okay? But now we're getting into day 7, and who hasn't shown up yet? Samuel. Now, Saul wants to make sure that what happens? He wants to make sure that they have these sacrifices offered. Look at verse 9. So Saul said, "Bring to me the burnt offering and the peace offerings." And he offered the burnt offerings. And as soon as he finished, verse 10, who arrives? Samuel. Now, what is the driving impetus behind Saul here?
Saul took Samuel's place off.
Oh, hold on, you're getting ahead of me real quick, Charlie. What is in back of Saul's mind? What's he wanting to make sure? That they're going to serve the Lord and make the sacrifices. Saul wants to make sure that these sacrifices are offered, right? He wants to make sure he's on God's side. He wants to make sure he has God's blessing. Good thing or bad thing? Good thing. To have God on our side would be a good thing, absolutely. We want God on our side. But what's the problem here? He goes about it the wrong way. Samuel had been clear. Samuel, who is a prophet of God, had been clear. I will come to you within a period of time. How long? 7 days. Is the 7-day period up yet? It's not up yet. We're on that last day, but it's not up yet. Why is Saul getting antsy here? What did the end of verse 8 say? Yeah, the people are trembling, they're scattering, they're running away from him, and he's already got a lot of them hiding in the hills and the caves and all like that. He's starting to see his number of people dwindle as they are being approached by an army that numbered how much? Like the sands of the seashore. Just a massive army coming against them. And so Saul says what? Bring the sacrifices to me and I'll offer them. And as soon as he had finished in verse 10, behold, Samuel came, and Saul went out to meet him and to greet him. And Samuel said, what have you done? And Saul said, because I saw that the people were scattering from me, and that you did not come within the appointed days, and that the Philistines were assembling at Michmash, therefore I said, now the Philistines will come down against me at Gilgal, and I have not asked the favor of the Lord, so I forced myself and offered the burnt offerings. And Samuel's response is what? You've acted foolishly. You acted foolishly by wanting God on your side? No. You acted foolishly because you wanted these offerings offered? No, you acted foolishly. Why? Because you didn't do what God's will was. You didn't do what God had said to the prophet. Wait the 7 days, he'll come and he'll offer the sacrifices. Verse 13, this is capítulo 13, verso 13. Samuel said to Saul, you have acted foolishly, and you have not kept the commandment of the Lord your God, which he commanded you. For now the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. So what do we learn there in verse 13? We learn more about this conversation that Saul and Samuel had had. And what Samuel had communicated to Saul about the 7 days was ultimately from whom? Was ultimately from God. This was God's command. You wait the 7 days. You wait for Samuel to come, and you wait for Samuel to come and offer the offerings. He missed on all points, didn't he? And so he violated God's command. Lynn, you had your hand up, sir. Mm-hmm. It is. Verse 14, now your kingdom, verso 14, now your kingdom shall not endure. And the Lord has sought out for himself a man after his own heart, and the Lord has appointed him as ruler over his people, because you have not kept what the Lord commanded you. You're in this place as king. There are high expectations of you. You have failed. And it's not like Saul made a mistake here. He knew what God had said. The time frame was not completed yet. He should have done what? He should have waited. He should have waited and trusted in God, and he didn't. And it was to his detriment and the detriment of the kingdom that he doesn't. And so in verse 14, God's going to choose a new leader. God has chosen a new leader. And this new leader is going to be what? Not who, but what? A man after his own heart. And so Samuel arose and went up from Gilgal to Gibeah of Benjamin, and Saul numbered the people who were present with him, about 600 men. And they fight against the Philistines. Verse 19, verso 19. Now no blacksmith could be found in all the land of Israel, for the Philistines said, otherwise the Hebrews will make swords or spears. So all Israel went down to the Philistines, each to sharpen his plowshare, his mattock, his axe, and his hoe. The charge was 2/3 of a shekel. And so it came about on the day of the battle that neither sword nor spear were found in the hands of any of the people who were with Saul and Jonathan, but they were found with Saul and his son Jonathan. And the garrison of the Philistines went out to the pass of Michmash. Now, chapter 14. Yes, sorry, Mitch. Go ahead. He waited 7 days. He waited 7 days according to the appointed time set by Samuel, but Samuel did not come to Gilgal. And I take that as being Samuel did not come to Gilgal yet. That you're still in this, it was the prophecy of God, it was the will of God, you wait these 7 days. My understanding of this passage is we're still on this 7th day. We're waiting for Samuel to get there. Saul looks around and everyone's getting skittish and scared. Saul says, bring it to me. And immediately after he does that, is when Samuel comes walking up, same day, which would indicate to me all of this is happening on this seventh day. That's how I'm reading the text here. Bill. You know, I'll punt on that one. I'll punt on that one just simply because God had said it's going to be in these 7 days. And if it's not in the 7 days, we've got a deeper problem there with God who said it's going to be in these 7 days.
Well, the whole thing of it is, Saul was told to wait. It didn't really matter if he came in on the seventh day. Saul was to wait for Samuel.
Okay.
Only Samuel could do that sacrifice.
Okay. So let's pick up over here, chapter 14. Chapter 14. So we've already started a decline in Saul's reign, right? We don't know exactly how far into it we are here at this point, but we're already looking forward to the next leader, right? And Saul's decline is only going to increase here as we come into chapter 14. Saul is ready to get vengeance on the Philistines. They are going to come and start trekking down the Philistines, trying to find them where they're hidden and smoke them out and destroy them. And I want you to come over here to chapter 14 and verse 24. Capítulo 14, verso 24. So the Israelites have the Philistines on the run now. They are pursuing after the Philistines. In verse 24, the men of Israel were hard-pressed on that day. For Saul had put the people under oath, saying, "Cursed be the man who eats food before evening, and until I have avenged myself on my enemies." So none of the people tasted food. So what has Saul told his army? Don't do what? Don't eat. As they're doing what? As they are tracking down the enemy. Could you imagine saying to an army of any size, a special forces unit might be more akin to what we're talking, don't eat. You are going to be out here expending untold numbers of calories tracking down people, but don't eat. Is this an idea that's very consistent with good leadership? Is this well thought out? This is a king acting how? Irrationally, right? He's acting selfishly. This has become more about him and his ego, seemingly, than about what the issue really is. So all the people of the land entered the forest, and there was honey on the ground in verse 25. When the people entered the forest, behold, there was a flow of honey, but no man put his hand to his mouth, for the people feared the oath. There is food in front of them, and they're scared to eat it, to take of it, to take what they need. But verse 27, Jonathan had not heard when his father put the people under the oath. And so as he's coming through the forest, he dips the end of his staff in the honey and takes it to himself. Oh, what do we have here? We've got the king's son disobeying the command of the king. There was trembling in the camp, and among all the people, even the garrison and the raiders trembled, and the earth quaked, so that it became a great trembling. Pardon me, I'm over to verse 27. Jonathan had not heard this. And so verse 28, your father strictly put the people under oath, saying, cursed be the man who eats food today. And the people were weary, and Jonathan said, my father has troubled the land. Jonathan is one of these minor Old Testament characters who is just laden with wisdom and insight. He does not get upset when he's told the kingship is not going to pass to you. It's going to pass to your friend David. He handles that and accepts that well. And here he realizes what his father has commanded of the people is foolhardy. It should have never happened. My father has troubled the land. See now how my eyes have brightened because I tasted a little of this honey. How much more if only the people had eaten freely today of the spoil of their enemies which they had found. For now the slaughter among the Philistines has not been great. It has not been great. Why? Because they don't have food. Because they're hungry. Because they're famished. Because Saul put forth this bad command, this bad order. They struck the Philistines in verse 31 that day from Michmash to Aijalon, and the people were very weary. The people rushed greedily upon the spoil, took sheep and oxen and calves, slew them on the ground. The people ate them with blood. Of course, as we're going back into Exodus and Leviticus, we recognize that was something that was never to be done in the nation of Israel. They were not supposed to eat their food with blood. They had very specific laws of slaughter and how they were supposed to eat meat and things like that. They told Saul, saying, behold, the people are sinning against the Lord by eating with blood. And he said, you have acted treacherously. Roll a great stone to me today. And Saul said, disperse yourselves among the people and say to them, each one of you bring me the ox slaughter. Do not sin against the Lord by eating with blood. And so all the people that night brought each one his ox with him and slaughtered it there. Saul built an altar to the Lord. It was the first altar that he built to the Lord. And I think verse 35 is interesting there. The first altar Saul builds. When we look at the lives of other servants of God throughout Old Testament history, there's frequent reference made to them building altars and erecting stones to the Lord and things like that. Here is Saul, who should have been in a leadership position, who should be a leader among Israel, and the text notes this is the first time he's ever done something like this. Saul inquires of the Lord as to what he should do next, but he did not answer him that day. This is verse 37. And so you've got this issue now between Saul and the Lord. Come to chapter 15. This warfare is going to continue. In chapter 15, we get kind of the last blow to Saul's reign as king. They're to go in and to destroy the Amalekites now in chapter 15. This is chapter 15, capítulo 15, verso 3, verse 3. Go and strike Amalek and utterly destroy all that he has, and do not spare him, but put to death both man and woman, child and infant, ox and sheep, and camel and donkey. Saul summoned the people and numbered them in Telaim, 200,000 foot soldiers and 10,000 men of Judah. Saul came to the city of Amalek and set an ambush in the valley. Saul said to the Kenites, go, depart, go down from among the Amalekites, so that I do not destroy you with them. For you showed kindness to all the sons of Israel when they came up from Egypt. And so the Kenites departed from the Amalekites. They come up to Amalek to destroy it, but in verse 8, what does he do to Agag, the king of Amalek? He takes him captive, takes him alive, and utterly destroyed the people with the edge of the sword. Saul and the people spared Agag the best of the sheep, the ox, and the fatlings, the lambs, and all that was good. And they were not willing to utterly destroy them, but everything despised and worthless, that they utterly destroyed. So everything we don't want, what? We'll destroy everything we don't want, but if something we want, we're going to what? We're going to keep it. No matter that God had said previously what? Destroy it all. So then the word of the Lord in verse 10, verso 10, comes to Samuel, saying, I regret that I have made Saul king. What sobering and sad words. God saying, I regret that I have made Saul king over Israel. For he has turned his back from following me and has not carried out my commands. And Samuel was distressed and cried out to the Lord all night. Samuel rose early in the morning to meet Saul, and it was told Samuel, saying, Saul came to Carmel, and behold, he set up a monument for himself, then turned and proceeded down to Gilgal. Samuel came to Saul. Saul said to him, Blessed are you of the Lord, I have carried out the command of the Lord. Now, we're seeing a pattern here. The last time when Saul failed, Samuel comes and Saul does what? He greets him. Happy to see you. But But Saul had done what? He had acted unfaithfully. Now the same thing. We're seeing kind of a characteristic of Saul here. Maybe if I just play the part, nothing bad will happen. Maybe I can just pull the wool over folks' eyes, and it doesn't happen. Oh, it's wonderful to see you, Samuel. I have performed the commandment of the Lord. And Samuel's answer is what?
You have disobeyed God.
Verse 14. What do I hear? I've done the commandment of the Lord. Have you now? What is? Are those sheep that I hear? Is that the lowing of the oxen? What am I hearing? And Saul's immediate response, like any good politician, is what? It wasn't me. You see, it was everybody and anybody else except for me. Here Saul's going to place the blame upon whom? It's the people. It's the people. They have brought them from the Amalekites. For the people spared the best of the sheep and the oxen to sacrifice. But they did it with good intentions, to sacrifice to the Lord your God. But the rest we have utterly destroyed. Now I'm going to bring myself into it. When we're talking about utterly destroying things, yes, God, I was a part of that. I was not a part, however, of keeping these things alive. Because obviously, God said, don't do that. And Samuel, I have not done that. And then Samuel said to Saul, wait and let me tell you what the Lord said to me last night. And while Saul here says, speak, what's Saul thinking in his mind undoubtedly? Please don't. Please don't. Samuel said, is it not true, though you were little in your own eyes, you were made the head of the tribes of Israel, and the Lord anointed you king over Israel. And the Lord sent you on a mission and said, go and utterly destroy the sinners, the Amalekites, and fight against them until they are exterminated. Why then did you not obey the voice of the Lord? But you rushed upon the spoil and did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. Saul said to Samuel, I did obey the voice of the Lord, and went on the mission which the Lord had sent me, and have brought back Agag, king of Amalek, and have utterly destroyed the Amalekites. And it's like, are we talking about the same thing here? I mean, you talk about hard-headed. So I have done the commandment of the Lord. I destroyed all of the Amalekites except for Agag. I brought him back. I mean, you talk about the patience of Job. Talk about the patience of Samuel here. And the same thing again. But the people took some of the spoil, sheep and oxen, the choicest of the things devoted to destruction, to sacrifice to the Lord your God at Gilgal. And Samuel said what? Does God have as much delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? There's been a lot done with these two verses here that I think just rip them out of the context and make it say something that it doesn't. Is God through Samuel saying that he disliked and disapproved of burnt offerings and sacrifices? No. But what was it that occasioned the need for sacrifices and burnt offerings? Disobedience. And so God is simply saying through Samuel, the first thing that I want is for people to obey me so that then these things would never be necessary. The point is not that burnt offerings and sacrifices were bad or somehow contrary to the will of God, but it's God saying first and foremost, I don't want sacrifices. First and foremost, I want what? I want obedience. I want faithfulness. And that's what we don't have with Saul. That's what we don't have with the people. To Saul's credit, verse 24, finally, after being confronted, 3 times now? 4 times? He finally says what? I've sinned. To his credit, I have sinned. I have indeed transgressed the command of the Lord in your words because I feared the people and listened to their voice. Now, therefore, please pardon my sin and return with me that I may worship the Lord. And Samuel said to Saul, I will not return with you. Here's the death knell for his reign, right? I will not return with you. You have rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord has rejected you from being king over Israel. Saul reaches for the edge of Samuel's robe. It tears. And Samuel says to him, the Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today and has given it to your neighbor who is better than you. Also, the glory of Israel will not lie or change his mind, for he is not a man that he should change his mind. Then he said, I have sinned, But please honor me now before the elders of my people and before Israel, and go back with me, that I may worship the Lord your God." And Samuel goes back with him. Samuel went back following Saul, and Saul worshiped the Lord. Then Samuel said, "Bring me Agag," and he hacks Agag to pieces. Then Samuel, this is verse 34, Samuel went to Ramah, but Saul went up to his house at Gibeah. And Samuel did not see Saul again until the day of his death, for Samuel grieved over Saul. And the Lord regretted that he had made Saul king over Israel. Let's get to our questions real quick. We'll get through a few of these before we close this morning. What warning did Samuel have for the people about the behavior of kings? What had Samuel warned about? What were they going to do? Yeah, they're going to do whatever they wanted. Yeah, good one. He was going to take their children. He's going to take their goods. He's going to take their animals, their seed, their harvest, things like that. What mission was Saul on that brought him into contact with Samuel initially? Hunting for his daddy's donkey up in the hills. That's good. This is back to Deuteronomy 17. What instructions were given to the kings in the law of Moses? We've referenced this a few times in past studies, but here it is now. What were kings not supposed to do? Don't number the people. Don't multiply horses. Don't multiply chariots. Don't multiply wives. Don't return to Egypt. And we're also not supposed to multiply what else? Silver and gold. Don't multiply those. We multiply those things and we end up doing what? We start trusting in them. Except for the wives, and that seems more to be the idea of when you made an alliance with a foreign nation, that alliance was sealed with them sending over daughters of the king or something like that as wives. And so here's a warning against making these treaties with foreign nations. Travis. Yes, they were. They were supposed to be aware and cognizant of the law of God and have it before them constantly. How does Saul eventually die? He attempts suicide. The attempt at suicide fails. And who gets him? One of the Amalekites. That's right. One of the Amalekites does. Saul reigned for about 40 years over the nation of Israel. List a few characteristics of Saul that led to his downfall. What brings Saul down? Okay, guys, that's like my junior high. He didn't obey God. Yeah, okay. How did he not obey God? He was impatient. It was all about him at times. What'd you say, Mike? Pride. Selfish. Jealous. Who said it? Lynn, what'd you say? Weak. Greedy. Stephen? He didn't follow through with the orders. Is that what you said? Yeah, absolutely. Good point. Yes, Mitch. Just a second, Charlie. Mitch had his hand up. Go ahead. Yes. And that's the point of the text. You were great and Israel was great when you were small in your own eyes. And when we get big in our own eyes, is when trouble comes. Charlie, what do you want to say?
The disobedience of God started with Moses
Mm-hmm.
when he went up on the mountain to receive the
Yeah.
Ten Commandments.
You're right.
And didn't come back down, and here they were worshiping idols.
Yep.
And that continued.
Question number 3 real quick. Yeah, that continues even until now. That's right. Question number 3. Should Saul have even been alive? At this point, should Saul even be alive? No. Why should Saul not have been alive? Okay, wasn't allowed to sacrifice. That's one of them. In 1 Samuel 28, who does Saul consort? Or who does he consult? A necromancer, a witch. Old Testament is extremely clear on that. You play any part in necromancy and what? You're to be cut off from your people. Saul should have been dead much earlier than he was. We talked some about Jonathan. Why did God regret making Saul king over Israel? We'll end with this. He didn't keep his commandments. Anything else?
He consulted a witch.
because the promise of Saul's reign never materialized. He had great plans and great visions for Saul, and it never came about because Saul was too selfish and too prideful. Appreciate your good input this morning. We will pick up next Sunday with lesson number 13. Thanks, guys.